students, welcome to Legacy IAS. In this video, we are going to cover an important chapter. This is from the class 8th book, and this is chapter number 12, and it talks about how nature works in harmony. Okay, so they have given very beautiful pictures to help us understand about how does all of the nature work in interaction as well as in harmony with each other. Okay, so let us start with the understanding of this chapter. Okay, so to start with, what they've given us are a set of questions, the set of questions that we must ponder upon, and we must try to understand and try to reason within our minds, because we have been through we have seen through life, and we have seen through the interactions between the living organisms as well as the non-living objects in our life. Okay, so the question is first, how might a loss of forest cover and changes in rainfall patterns lead to elephants leading into the human farms and villages? Okay, that is, how does this happen, that when there is scarcity of resources for the elephants, or there is some kind of habitat degradation for the elephants, then how do they come into interaction with the human colonies or human societies? Okay, that is human farms and their villages. The second question, okay, we must ponder upon this. Second, imagine that you are in a dense forest. What kind of relationships, this is also the chapter is going to stress upon, what is the kind of relationships would you have with water, sunlight, other animals, and other components of the forest, right? So it is talking about what is the interaction, not with the ones that are living, but with the non-living ones, non-living. All right, now third question, do you think earth can thrive without humans? That means, does earth actually need humans? Right, that is, when we talk about earth, the whole entity, it is non-living in nature, but does it need humans? And secondly, on the other hand, can humans survive without earth? Can we survive without earth? To say that earth is the only habitable planet that we see in our solar system, that means, can you survive without earth? Okay, do you have other planets to go through, or do you have some other place that you can survive in? Okay, that is the question. Now, if two kinds of birds, that means two kinds of living organisms, if they compete for the same fruit, how might their way of living change over time? It is just to say, for example, you and suppose say your sibling, there are two people, and then there is just one chocolate. Okay, then how the interaction will change over time when they are going to access that chocolate? Okay, both of you want that chocolate, so there will be a competition kind of a thing, right? Now, can human actions cause natural disasters? Can human actions cause natural disasters? That means, due to the activities that is done by humans, can it result into the disasters that are there? For example, can it result into various kinds of disasters which are leading to degradation of ecosystems or degradation of any kind of abiotic components? All right, so let us start with this chapter. Okay, so in the first part, let us read it. So it says, in several parts of India, states like Odisha, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Assam, and Chhattisgarh, elephants enter farms and villages. When do they enter it? They enter when the vegetation is scarce and the water holes dry up in their natural habitat. So the thing is that elephants, because of their degradation, there is degradation of habitat. That means, what is needed by the elephant? Elephant to survive needs vegetation. Okay, it needs to eat, that is where it will derive its food from, and also it needs water. And when one of this is not, or both of this is not available, if it is not available, what they will do? They will move out. They will move out of their habitat. Okay, so let us see. If they dry up in their natural habitats, elephants may wander into nearby farms or plantations in search of food. Food like what? Food like bananas, sugarcane, and this can lead to crop damage and at times harm people and domestic animals. So this starts with the understanding of how does the conflict as in competition for the resources between human and wildlife start. That means, we say, if elephants in their habitat get vegetation, they get water, then it is fine. They will stay within the forest itself. But if it is not available, they will have to move out in search of the conditions. Like they will require food, that is banana and sugarcane. And in doing so, in competition of such kind of resources, they will be having interaction with the humans also and their crops as well. Therefore, there will be crop damage, and times people's lives can also be lost, and domestic animals can also lose their lives. Now, so this is about vegetation. Now, how can this be affected? The next question that we ask is, why should it not be made available? Why is it not available? Right? Why is it not available? That is causing the elephant to move out. So here you will see. So you have changes in rainfall and temperature affect vegetation. We all know that vegetation will depend upon, because vegetation is kind of, we are talking about plants, they are autotrophs, they produce their own food, and because of a combination of water content as well as ambient amount of temperature, for the plant to conduct photosynthesis must be there. If there is variation between them, then it can affect vegetation. This we know. Okay, now this is one. Second is, why the vegetation may not be there. Second, it is because of cutting down of trees. Now, cutting down of trees is by human activities. Okay, it is because we are trying to construct roads, we are trying to connect one city to the other city, and in midst of it you will have a forest. And to have this connectivity between the cities, to reduce the amount of distance, we may need to cut down the trees. Okay, so constructing roads and buildings, we require buildings for homing people. A lot of people are there who are moving to the cities, and therefore you will require that more buildings can house more number of people. So this makes it worse. Basically, we are trying to house more number of people, we are trying to have more number of people meet their needs, and because of this, the habitat of the elephant is getting degraded. The habitat degraded, vegetation not there, water holes drying up, elephants have no choice to survive, they must move out, and then there is interaction, and therefore crop damages as well as life losses can take place, right? So this leads to drying and shrinking of forest, the natural home of animals. Because of loss of habitat, animals will tend to move into the human habitats, right? So there is human wildlife conflict, right? So they are adapted to, what about elephants? They are adapted to forest life, but sudden changes make it hard for them to survive. Okay. So up until now, we are talking about habitat that has been there, habitat degradation. Habitat degradation. This means the conditions that are required to sustain the habitat is now no more available, and therefore the survival of the elephant is being threatened. Now we have a solution for that also. What is the solution? The solution comes in the form of ecological corridors. Okay, so you will see that wildlife ecologists, they have identified and marked corridors in many parts of the country to allow safe movement of animals. Basically, it is like this. This is one forest. This is forest number one. This is forest number two, and you have nothing in between. You have a number of other things in between. So what do? Okay, maybe you have a road. So what they will do is they will have the right to passage. That means because habitat can degrade here. Okay, in forest one, if the habitat is degraded, they will try and have this thing. They will have a passage that is constructed like this. This is a passage that is constructed because the elephant, if it finds that forest 1 is not now degraded, and therefore it can move to forest 2 and still sustain its need, it does not need to move outside of forest 1. Okay, and similarly, if forest 2 is degraded, after some time it can return back to forest 1 when it has replenished, and it does not need to move out of the forest. Okay, all of this does not need to happen. Okay, so these corridors connect forest habitats, enabling wildlife such as elephants to move or travel in need between large forest areas without coming into conflict of human settlement. So this is a solution. That means we started with the problem, that is habitat degradation is taking place, and there are human needs also, and because of that, the elephants, to survive, they need vegetation as well as water, so they move out, human wildlife conflict is there. And to have such kind of things in place so that there is no kind of conflict, let us construct ecological corridors. Okay, now next, how do we experience and interpret our surroundings. This is the next question, next section. So here we start with experience and interpret our surroundings. Okay. So first of all, it starts with the definition of habitat. What is a habitat? Okay. A habitat is simply a place where an organism lives. It is a place where an organism lives. What is the habitat of humans, for example? Comment in the answer box. What is the habitat of humans? Okay. For example, it can be a 2 BHK, it can be a 3 BHK. Okay, that is something that is having the supplies along with it. It has the water supply. Okay, can you survive without water supply? No. 24/7 electricity. Okay, there is gas stove, there is use of natural gas, there is LPG, right? And then you will have other things also that are needed for you to survive in that house. Okay, so that is the habitat that we have as in the cities, right? Similarly, the organisms will also have habitat, and it is simply a place where the organism will live. It could even be just bark of a tree. Examples: the plants and animals interact with each other and adapt to survive in the surrounding conditions they live in. Okay. Now the chapter suggests that you try and identify two nearby habitats and identify all the kinds of living organisms and non-living components, living organisms and non-living components in each of them. Okay. So once this activity is done, what are the questions that we have to answer? So you can see here that they have taken two habitats. One is a pond habitat. You could see here. This one is a pond habitat, and this one is a forest. This one is a forest habitat. Okay, so it is saying just compare both of these habitats. Okay, or you could just go into the surroundings. You can observe two different habitats, and then try to understand what are the common characteristics that you observe in both the habitats. One common characteristics that you observe. So the similarities, what are the similarities that are there in both the habitats? That both will have living beings as well as non-living things. It is not that the habitats will only contain the living beings or they will only contain the non-living things. Okay, habitat is always from a point of view of an animal. Okay, if an animal is surviving, that means the survival conditions are met by that habitat. Okay, so if there is no living being, if there is composition of only non-living things, then we don't see it as a habitat. Now, however, the types of living beings are different and the non-living things also vary. It is saying that basically that there are similarities in the way that living things and non-living objects are also there. Okay, however, what is the type of living beings, what are the different types, or what are the different species that we find in these habitats, they might be different, and the non-living things may also be different. Okay, now here the living things, there's a term associated with it, and it is called biotic components. It is called biotic components. From now on we will understand it as living components or living beings. Abiotic components are the ones that are non-living, abiotic. Okay, so living is biotic and non-living is abiotic. Now going forward, every organism needs specific conditions to survive. You see here. So every organism needs specific conditions to survive. Yes, we have already stated that survival conditions must be met for it to be a habitat, for the living beings to be there, right? This is logical. Now going forward, from this activity you can see that different habitats offer different living conditions. That means it also depends upon what kind of requirements do you have. Okay, for example, the requirement of a fish is the pond. The requirement of a fish is a pond, while the requirement of monkey is that there must be a forest, there must be trees, and therefore a monkey cannot have the same habitat as a fish. Similarly, fish cannot have the same habitat as a monkey, right? So we say that habitat, we say living organisms are there. That means fish, monkey, and soil in the terrestrial part, while water in the pond. These living things as well as non-living things are there, but the types in which they vary, and therefore they are different in that sense. Common in the sense that they are living and non-living components as well. Okay, now let us see in a pond. You'll see here. So fish is a biotic component. Okay, it is living, it is a biotic component. How do fish survive in a pond? That means what are the conditions required for the fish to survive in a pond, right? So a pond provides for what? Food. We already know. You already know from the previous chapters that living organisms require what? They are going to have life processes: respiration, excretion, growth and development, reproduction. All of these things need to happen. So food for nutrition comes from water, oxygen, respiration, shelter, and space to grow. These conditions essential for survival of organisms. So fish will have both biotic needs as well as abiotic needs. Biotic needs means needs from living organisms. Abiotic needs means needs from non-living objects. Okay, fish obtain their biotic needs such as food from small plants and animals, and abiotic needs such as oxygen and water from the pond itself. Okay, now it is not like fish is the only organism that is there present in the pond. You will have other living beings also that inhabit the pond. What are those? Frogs, turtles, snakes, dragonflies, mosquitoes, snails, and ducks, all along with plants. These are all animals. When we talk about it, these are all animals. Okay, what about the plants? The plants are also here. That they are like algae, diatoms, duckweeds, lotus. They all interact with other living beings, not just living beings, but also non-living things present in the place where they grow and all of this is necessary. It is not like water is not necessary, rocks are not necessary, minerals are not necessary, air is not necessary. All of this is necessary for creating the apt habitat for required for survival of the organism. Now let us move forward. So each habitat, now we understand the characteristics. We understand habitat. Sorry, habitat. Okay, what is the component of habitat? Each habitat will have its own biotic components. This means living component and physical conditions. Physical conditions: air, sunlight, water, temperature, and soil. So different organisms living in the same habitat may use the resources in different ways. What this paragraph is trying to establish is that the same habitat, you might have two different animals living in a same habitat, but the way they use that habitat is different. Use is different. Okay? That means the way they use it, it may be different with the same habitat itself. One, we are talking about there are different types of habitat. There can be a pond habitat, there can be a forest habitat. Apart from that, you will also feel that even though two species are living within one habitat, then also you will find that they use the habitat in a different way. Okay, just like it is like saying that there are two students who are there, who take a subscription and study in a library. Okay, they utilize the library in a different way. Okay, for example, one person can be studying for civil services, the other person might be studying for the state services. Okay, or else one person might be studying in the daytime. Okay, the other person might be studying in the night time. So this habitat is same, and the living organisms are using it for in a different manner. That is all that it is saying. So here you can see the examples. A forest might be warm during the day and cool at night. A snake that comes out at night and a rodent is active during the day, both live in the same plant. So it is talking about snake as well as rodent. The rodent is active during the day while snake only comes out at night. The habitat is same, okay, but the use is being different. So this is how living organisms will coexist in harmony and in the same habitat. This is how they use, because of the differences in uses as well. Now, coming to the next section, who all live together in the nature. Okay, now this is an important concept. So far we have just talked about fish, like fish in a pond. Okay, but when we look at a pond, when you look at a pond, do you observe that there is only one fish, or there are many fish of the same type, of or same species, we could say, same species. Okay, what do we observe? Do we observe this only one fish? No, there are many fish. So the group of fish of the same kind living together in a pond habitat is called a population. It is just like saying what is the population of India? That means that we are counting how many humans are there in India. Similarly, we are talking about a pond. What is the population of fish in a pond? It means how many number of fish of the same kind are there in a pond. Same kind matlab same species only. Same species means they must be able to interbreed. They must be capable of exchanging genes. That means they must be able to carry out the life processes between them of reproduction. Okay? So population of that particular fish. So it is again an activity time, and it says that you must go to these habitats and count the number. You should actually have a census of the number of fish in a pond. Okay, so it is saying that you find out how many plants are there. Okay, plant number one, how much is the population? Plant number two, what is the population? Animal one, animal two, what is the population, and so on. Okay, so the observations. So the observations is here. So you will see. So here it is saying that we can explain that population is a group of same type of organisms in a habitat at a given time. Okay? Notice this kind of a condition. That is, we are talking about not different species. It is not like we are counting the number of fish and frogs. We are just talking about the number of fish, and that too of that species itself. Only that species we are counting the same number of the same species number. Okay, and also that occupy the habitat in a given time. Okay, it is not like we are talking about the time being not there. That means in suppose say in 10 days how much of fish have I observed. Okay, so can a habitat have only one type of living organism? The next question is, when we start with understanding that there are multiple fishes of the same species that are present, and that is the population. Okay. Now we understand this, that are there only fish of the same species present in that pond? The answer is obviously no. You have seen other types of living organisms also. For example, you will also have a frog, right? So it is saying that can a habitat have only one type of living organism? No, we have seen that in a pond there are multiple other organisms also that are not of the same species as the fish. Now, what might happen then? If this is the case, then what happens? There are resources that are available in the pond: food, nutrition, water, okay, even the oxygen, everything is being present. Now, if there are more number of species, if all organisms are the same, they would have the same requirements: food, water, space, and leading to competition and possible scarcity of resources. So this paragraph is basically saying this, that suppose say you have a fish and same species fish. If the population of the species is such that it is the only one, that is present, only one in the pond. Okay, that means there are no other species. Then what will happen is there will be high competition for the resources, right? High competition of the resources. Okay, because the fishes population will rise. Okay, there will be reproduction also, there will be increase in population of these fishes, and over a period of time you will find that due to competition of resources there will be scarcity of resources. When there is scarcity of resources, then the levels of population will decline. Okay, so now it leads up to this paragraph which says that certainly living organisms of same species are not the only one that are present in a habitat. We'll see that different group of organisms live together in a habitat. Okay, and what is it called? Population was for single species. Okay, for community it comprises of different populations that are sharing the same habitat. They're sharing the same habitat. This means that even though you will have one population of fish, that means some number of fish of the same species, some number of frogs of the same species, some number of suppose say snakes of the same species, these will be there. and this is called community. That means different populations sharing the same habitat. So the biotic components of a habitat, such as plants, animals, and microorganisms, they together form the community. Okay? So the biotic components, we are talking about biotic components of the habitat, and these organisms interact and depend on one another for their survival. Okay, now moving forward, there is an interesting, very interesting and very you know uh, something that you would also know of, and it is responsible for a lot of food production in the world itself. Okay, so it is this box. Talks about, when we talk about brightly colored flowers that are blooming around us, okay, if we have to see them, then the flower that we see, it has a stalk is there. Okay, then you have green leafy structures called sepals. These are sepals. Okay. And colored petals, these are the colored ones, these are petals, and two reproductive parts that are carpel and stamen. Carpel, and this is the reproductive part. Carpels is the female part of the flower and stamen is the male part. What are stamens used for? Stamens burst and release yellow dust. Basically they release pollen grains. Okay, these pollen grains, when they arrive at the carpel, through different agents, then reproduction is supposed to happen, okay, in flowering plants. So what are the agents? What are the agents that move these pollen grains from the stamens to the other carpels? It is because of agents like wind, water, insects, bats, birds. These are the ones that are also called the pollinating agent, and the whole process of moving pollen grains from the stamen to the carpel is known as pollination. So they help pollen from stamens to the carpels of the same or the different flowers. This process is called pollination, and it is essential for formation of fruits and seeds. So you see how abiotic factors, abiotic components, or non-living components of the system are required to carry out this process of reproduction in a flowering plant. It is important for fruits, fruition, as well as the seeds. Now, the next question is that, does every organism in a community matter? We are talking about biotic components that occupy that occupy a system, and then we are also talking about what are their interactions with the environment that they live in. So now our question is, are every organism that is there in the community, is everything important? Now, what they've done is they have gone for a study, an activity. Okay, these are, remember these two ponds. In one pond, you can see that there are fishes. So pond A is with fish. Okay, you can see multiple fish. You can see dragonfly. You can see flowers. Okay, flowers. So many flowers are there. What about the pond B? Pond B is without fish. It has dragonflies, but very few flowers. Few of them. Okay, so we are basically trying to understand what will the presence of fish do to the flowering plant. Is there some kind of correlation? That means in this first diagram, if I have fish, if these fishes are there, then does it correlate to having plants? Does it correlate to having flowering plants? Or because here fishes are not there, then the fruiting plants or the flowering plants are also not there. Is this the case? Right? So let us see if fish is important for this. Okay. Now it says, what is the difference? A is with fish and large number of flowering plants are there. B is without fish and fewer flowering plants are around there. What are the reason for these observations? So we will see this, that if we compare the number of dragonflies and butterflies, we are already aware of the agents. Okay, these are the agents that are responsible for pollination. Pollination means movement of pollen grains from stamen to the carpel. Okay, there are multiple agents that enable such kind of process. All right, so do you find any relationship between the number of dragonflies and bees or butterflies? These are the ones that are pollinating agents. So they are asking us whether the number of these agents are different. Okay, whether the number is different in each of these points. Okay, because we are starting from backwards, we are saying that flowering plants, for flowers to happen, there must be pollination. For pollination to happen, there must be pollinating agents. Okay, so is there any difference in population for these? So we will see that. Observe that in pond A with fish, the number of dragonflies were less as compared to pond B. Okay, so here you have this, that fish, there is a correlation that is given here, that fish will eat the dragonfly larva. So this means that fish that was present in pond A, okay, this is present in higher quantities in pond A. So ponds with fish will have fewer dragonflies. Okay. Now the pollinating agent. First of all, let us understand this correlation. Flowers, okay, flowering plants. For this to be there, pollination must be there. For pollination to happen, I must have the pollinating agent. What is the pollinating agent? Pollinating agent is bees, flies, butterflies, okay, butterflies. If this is present, then the flowers will be there. Okay, then the flowers will be there. Okay, this relation is understood. Now it is saying that there are dragonflies also. There are dragonflies which eat these pollinating agents like flies, bees, and butterflies. So dragonflies will eliminate the population of these pollinating agents. With fewer dragonflies, more bees, flies, and butterflies were found. So fish, how does it happen? Fish eat up dragonflies, fish eat up dragonflies, which leads to, which increases, what increases the population of the pollinators. Okay, so this is increased. When the population of these pollinators is increased, automatically you will have more number of flowers. Okay, simpler way of understanding this, simple way, okay, just understand this, that for flowering, pollination is needed. For pollination, pollinating agent is needed. For pollinating agent, which are the agents? Bees, flies, butterflies. So I need the population to be higher. Okay, but I have a organism that eats up these pollinating agents. But then if I have fishes eat up this organism that eats up the pollinating agent. In way, fish is enabling the growth of pollinating agent, and therefore the flowering is increased, right? So here you can see these insects help pollinate flowers. So we are talking about bees, flies, butterflies help nearby move from pollen from one flower to the another, which helps to produce seeds. Okay, so flowers near the ponds with fish may produce more seeds than those near the ponds without fish, and therefore in this diagram, when we see in pond with fish, here you will have more number of fish, here you will have less number of fish, and more number of dragonflies. More number of dragonflies means less number of other pollinating agents. Okay, so the conclusion that can be drawn here, I'll just clean it up. Okay, so conclusion is conclusion is the study shows how biotic components, that means the living organisms, how do they interact, that means fish, dragonflies, pollinators, and plants interact with abiotic components, that is temperature, water, nutrients, interact with and affect each other. Okay. Similarly, think about this. Now, if there are humans, okay, and they go for fishing, if they reduce the number of fish, wouldn't the population of dragonflies increase? Because of dragonflies population increasing, wouldn't there be effect on the population of the pollinating agents like bees, flies, and butterflies? And therefore, the flowering plants will also reduce. Okay, so it says that overfishing by humans can change this balance. Okay. Now, the next question that comes into our mind is, what are different types of interactions among organisms and their surroundings? That means if we are talking about the dependence and this kind of a balance is there, that means one can control the population of the other, and therefore there are continuous interaction that is taking place. So we want to know what are the different types of interactions, what are the different ways in which the biotic or the living components of the system, they interact with each other. What is the point of contact? What is the relationship that they share? Okay. So what is the different types of interactions among organisms and their surroundings? Okay. Not only between the organisms, but also with respect to their surroundings. For example, how does fish interact with water? How does a frog interact with water? How does a monkey interact with the tree? Okay. How does monkey interact with, suppose, say, soil, or monkey interact with water? Okay. So here it says that we already know, we have already studied in grade 7. Uh, we talk about how plants and animals need air, water, and soil and sunlight to grow. Okay, all of this is needed for the plants. Okay, is needed by the plants. Living organisms or biotic community depend upon non-living things, that is abiotic components for the survival. This we already know. Plants and animals also depend upon each other for nutrition, respiration. These are life processes, reproduction. Their interactions, these are interactions among the biotic components. Both type of interactions among biotic components between biotic and abiotic components are important for survival. Basically, we are saying biotic or biotic components. Okay, there is biotic, we understand that there is non-living and there is living. This is abiotic, this is biotic. So there can be abiotic and biotic interaction, there can be biotic and biotic interaction, like this, abiotic and biotic, and then there can be abiotic and abiotic interactions also. Okay, so now let us see and correlate how does the characteristics vary. Okay, so first criteria between biotic and abiotic components. Criterion 1. Okay, interactions between abiotic and biotic components. What are these composed of? You will talk about various kinds of life processes, okay, like nutrition, because you need, there are various kinds of, elements that go for cycling, like carbon cycle is there, nitrogen cycle is there. Okay, so nutrition is something that is derived from both abiotic and biotic components. Respiration, yes. Reproduction in biotic components, all of these are the life processes that are exhibited because of the presence of abiotic and biotic components. Interaction between two abiotic components, two abiotic components. Okay, these may influence the physical characteristics of a habitat. Okay, for example, temperature. If you have the ambient temperature and you have the ambient rainfall, these are two abiotic components. This can result into a rainforest, or this could result into an evergreen forest. Okay, evergreen forests that do not shed their leaves together. Okay, third third is this, interaction amongst biotic components. Biotic, these may influence availability of resources. Availability of resources, how is it being there? Because two biotic components may compete for the same resource, and in effect it might outcompete each other. So availability of resources, there can be scarcity of resources if there is overconsumption by one of the species. They are needed for life processes like nutrition, respiration, and reproduction, right? So we see all the permutation and combination of biotic and abiotic, and we see how does it support the life processes. Now moving on to the interactions. Okay, interactions of biotic and abiotic components. They have given us more examples, and it is also going to help us to analyze things, understand it much more clearly. First is interaction between biotic and abiotic components. That means biotic and abiotic. Let us see. This is earthworms that live in moist soil. This is this is biotic, and this is abiotic. Okay, they live in moist soil. It is being provided as an habitat. This is the interaction. Many microbes, biotic, are present in the pond. Yes, it is present. So biotic and abiotic are interacting here. Fish lays egg in water. This is biotic, this is abiotic. So we see that there is set criteria in which abiotic and biotic will interact. That means they are important for each other. Now second, criteria 2, interaction between two abiotic components, abiotic and abiotic. Let us see. The day temperature is high due to bright sunlight. That means temperature, one is abiotic component, sunlight is also an abiotic component, and they are getting correlated to each other, and this is how abiotic component interact. Water evaporating fast due to sunlight. Water is the abiotic, sunlight is the abiotic. How do they interact? Through evaporation. Okay. Air current is blowing slowly on the water surface, creating gentle waves. Okay, you could consider water waves or water surface as the abiotic component. Air current is also the abiotic component. The correlation is that it blows slowly and creates waves. Soil, the abiotic component, near the pond is moist. Okay, the relation is that they are moist. Criteria 3, interaction between the biotic components. 1, frog eats insects. Biotic, frogs are biotic, insects are also biotic. Interaction between biotic, it is eating it. Water snake eats fish. Biotic 1, biotic 2. Okay, biotic component 1, 2. Frogs and fish may compete for small insect larvae. So this is something that is there as a competition. That means two of the biotic components are competing for the same resource. Same resource is small insect. Then fish lays egg and water near the vegetation to protect them from other fish or frogs, right? So this is the way in which the biotic components or the living components will interact with each other. Now, so this is further, we try to understand different types of interactions occur within a habitat. Okay. And from this, we can infer that the biotic components, whether it is plant, animals, and microorganisms, and the abiotic components like air, water, soil, sunlight, temperature, they interact with each other to form an ecosystem. Here you have the definition of ecosystem. We are seeing that it is composed of two components. One is the biotic and the abiotic, and they also interact with each other. When they interact with each other, then they form what is known as ecosystem. Now ecosystem is not something that is going to be uniform. Different communities of living organisms, they will interact with the biotic components in the ecosystem, and there are two main types of ecosystems in nature. What are those types? One is based upon water and one is based upon land. Okay, so the one that is based upon water is called aquatic ecosystems. Aquatic ecosystems will include, examples are aquatic ecosystems that are water based ones, ponds, rivers, lakes. Terrestrial ecosystems or the land based ecosystems are like forest, farms, or even large trees like banyan, mango tree, pilkan tree. Okay, but is there a restriction on size of the ecosystem? Does it mean that ecosystem has to be of a particular size? It has to be so and so square kilometers. It is not there. Okay, it means that the ecosystems can be large, it can be small. Okay, can you find overlapping ecosystems in figure 12.6? Yes, we can see that land and water, these are overlapping ecosystems that we see. Now, going forward, this overlap that we were seeing earlier, overlap of different terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. You can see a small river along with mountains, forest, grasslands, and farmland, which are examples of terrestrial ecosystems. Now, here is an important distinction. Okay, the earlier two that we were talking about, the terrestrial ecosystems and the aquatic ecosystems, those are natural ecosystems that are present in the nature by themselves. They are self-sustained with respect to the independence and balance of it. When we talk about human made ecosystem, a farmland, on the other hand, is a human-based ecosystem, which means that it needs continuous human intervention. It needs human intervention for it to sustain. So these ecosystems are interacting with each other at any given point. Okay. Now, in activity 12.4, we have seen that importance of components and their interactions. Okay, abiotic, biotic. Okay, abiotic and abiotic. We have seen the interactions and how is it important to create survival conditions. Okay, this shows how living organisms depend upon the non-living component of an ecosystem. Okay, now now this part, it is talking about, does abiotic component depend upon biotic component? So you will see, just as biotic components depend upon abiotic components for their life processes, of course, abiotic components are also influenced by biotic components. That means there is an influence, there is a considerable influence of the biotic components that are there and occupy these abiotic components. So example, plants are responsible for increasing the oxygen in atmosphere during photosynthesis. Okay, so oxygen is an abiotic component in the atmosphere, and because of this, because of plants, that is the biotic one, it is also influencing the composition of atmosphere. Roots. Let us talk about roots. What do the roots do? Roots will bind to the soil in the place and prevent erosion. Okay, roots are biotic component. They are living component of plants. Okay, they are buried under the soil and are able to bind the soil particles which are abiotic in nature. That means it will stop any kind of erosion. That means transfer or transport of the soil particles from that place to another place, right? Similarly, plants retain moisture and they help to cool the atmosphere. This is also there. All right. Now, this activity they are talking about, they are just asking how do these kind of organisms, what do they eat? Okay, that means we are talking about what do the plants eat, what do the animals eat, okay, what do the consumers or the decomposers eat, okay. And they are also asking whether they perform the process of photosynthesis or not. Photosynthesis, okay. So here are the results. So the thing is, how do plants get their food? How do plants get their food? Okay, it is not like they go to a shop and buy their food, right? So how do they get their food? As you know, plants make their own food by the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis means manufacturing food in the presence of sunlight. That is what the word photo would mean, right? Thus, they are called producers or autotrophs. What is the meaning of autotrophs? It can be broken down into two words. One is auto means self, and troph means food or nourishment. That means self food, self nourishment. Okay, that means they can manufacture food for themselves. Now there are not all organisms are capable for doing this, right? For example, even humans are not able to have their own food. That means we cannot prepare our own food. We need to derive it from the plants, or we need to derive it from the animals. Okay, it is not like humans will stand in the sunlight and then they will get the required nutrition required for their growth and development, right? So organisms cannot produce their own food and depend on other organisms for their food, are called consumers. Okay, these were producers, these are consumers, these are autotrophs, these are called heterotrophs. So we are heterotrophs. Okay, hetero means other and troph means again nourishment or food. So these are there. Now there are other types in which we classify these consumers also. Okay, so the consumers which only eat plants, only plants for them. Okay, that is they are having only plants on their menu, that is herbivores such as deer, hare, and those that eat only animals are called carnivores. Okay, so one who has plants on their menu, only plants, nothing else, that is herbivore. One that has only animals on their menu, no plants, it is carnivores. Okay, and organisms that eat both, that means their menu will contain both plants as well as animals. This means that they are omnivores. What are some examples of that? Crows, foxes, mice. Okay, they are omnivores. Now who eats whom? Now what they are trying to understand, why what we are trying to understand here is that how can we make linkages with feeding relationship among the organisms in a given ecosystem? Okay, that is it linked? Okay, is it linked? That means we are talking, this is a part of the biotic interaction itself. We are trying to understand between the different levels of organisms that are represented, is there a link that is being established? That means does one organism eat the other, and so on. Okay, so here is an example of a food chain. A food chain you might have studied in your uh, school school level also. So let us see. So you have example of a grassland ecosystem. Okay, we have various types of terrestrial ecosystem. Amongst them, there is a grassland ecosystem. Terrestrial ecosystem is land-based ecosystem. You see forest, you see grasslands, you see deserts. Okay, these are terrestrial ecosystems. So let us see for example of a grassland ecosystem. What are the organisms? Organisms is grass is there, frog is there, hare, grasshopper, snake, and eagle. Is there a relationship between these things? That is what we are trying to ask. Relationship of who eats whom is shown among the following organisms. Okay, so you will see that there is grass, Okay, grass is eaten by a grasshopper. This is a grasshopper. Then it is eaten by a grasshopper is eaten by a frog. Frog is eaten by a snake. Snake is eaten by an eagle. Okay, this is what happens. That means sun's energy, this is sun's energy through photosynthesis is going into the grass. It is preparing its own food. This is your autotroph. Okay, the other line of consumers that we have, other line of consumers, this is how the energy will flow. That means the grasshopper will derive energy from the plants itself, and then frogs will derive energy from the grasshopper, and snakes derive energy from eating the frogs, and eagle derives energy from eating the snakes. Okay, so this is an example of a food chain that is given. That is grasshopper, frog, snake, and eagle. So we have seen this only. Interactions between biotic components based on feeding relationships can be represented in a form of a linear chain. What is this linear chain is called? This kind of linear chain that we were talking about. Okay, so this linear chain is called a food chain. It is a simple sequence which shows who eats whom in an ecosystem. This is something that is simple to understand. Okay, now now another activity which in which you are required to see that what is the number at each level. So we have the food chain. Okay, we just have to count at every level of food chain. That is at the level of grass, at the level of grasshopper, at the level of frog, how many number of individuals of the species are there. That means how much amount of grass, how much amount of grasshopper, how much amount of frogs, how much amount of snakes, how much amount of eagle. Okay, and if we try to arrange them in the order of their if we try to arrange them in the order of their food chain, and also increase or decrease whatever the number of population is there, we will find that it will come into a pyramid form. Okay, basically we are saying this. You can see, count the number of type of organisms, okay, and make a table and set a number against each. Arrange the number in ascending order and consider the highest number of the base and the lowest at the top. Highest number at the base and lowest at the top. Okay, so what figure do we get? You will see it looks like a pyramid. So here you can see it will look something like this. That means food chain. You will see the food chain will proceed like this. Okay, that is at the lowest level you will have the maximum population of a species in a food chain. Then you will have moderate population, and this will have the least population at the top. And that is how it is created. It is just like arranging all the number of that organism of the species present in that ecosystem in this box, and then going above to this rectangle box, and then above to this rectangle box. Okay, so this will come in a structure of a pyramid. So herbivores are at second level, small carnivores at the third level, large carnivores occupy the next level. So naturally you will find that the number of vultures will be less, okay, much less as compared to the producers that are on the first trophic level. So we have producers will be in maximum quantity, max quantity. Vultures, however, vultures that are large carnivores, tigers or vultures, they would be in minimum quantity. So the resulting figure based upon the numbers of the animals that are there in the food chain, number of animals, plants, all those things, it will be a pyramid of this type. Okay, you're basically arranging everyone here. So here you will have producers, here you will have hares and deer, here you will have small carnivores like frogs, here you will have large carnivores like tigers and vultures. Okay. Now food chain is something that is for us to understand. Okay, it is very simple, in which there is a linear relationship between who eats whom. Okay, but it is not something that exists in the nature, neither it is possible, because ecosystem will then collapse. That means, suppose say we are talking about grasshopper being eaten by frogs eaten by snakes. If I eliminate frogs, if the population of frog deteriorates, suppose there is enough amount of pollution into the waters, and therefore we find that frogs have been eliminated, then this linear food chain will also collapse. So the nature again has its own mechanism to fight against such kind of decline, and this is because it has food web. Okay, you can see the structure. You can see the structure. That means there are, at every level you will have different varieties. You will have different varieties on which the animals can depend upon other animals also if the population of one of their foods is getting eliminated. Okay, so you will have, let us see, each of the organisms may be eaten by two or more types of organisms. Thus, in an ecosystem, the food chains are interlinked. So, interlinked food chains you will see. So, for example, this is one food chain, this is another food chain. Okay, this is another food chain. So, food chain 1, food chain 2, food chain 3, all of these are linear food chain, and when they are linked together, they are called food web. This is called food web. Okay, now the next part of discussion is about the waste. Okay, that is, in the life processes we have seen that excretion is also a process that takes place in the life processes. But what happens to the waste? That means when death occurs, that means when the life processes cease to exist, what happens to the waste? Okay, so we are going to discuss this. Look at this, these structures. You would have seen this. These are called mushroom. What are mushrooms? Mushrooms are actually fungi. We'll learn about fungi, we'll learn about bacteria. Okay, so what do you think happens to the dead organisms that are there? That means once living, now they are dead, they are not performing their life processes. What happens to the bodies of those living organisms which are dead now? Okay, so we'll see that we have seen small umbrella like structures, mushrooms. They are growing on dead plants or trees during the rainy season. Okay, these are a type of fungi. These are a type of fungi that grow on the dead plant. Okay, why? Because they feed on them. So microorganisms like fungi, and other is bacteria. Okay, so two things you have to remember: fungi and bacteria. They offer to clean up the environment of the dead organisms. Okay, so break down complex substances. What is their function? It is to break down the complex substances in the dead plants and animals to simpler ones, because then they will be able to consume it. This process returns important nutrients back into the soil. Okay, important nutrients now back into the soil. You also find tiny insects like beetles and flies on animal droppings like elephant dung, as they help to break down and recycle nutrients back into the environment. So basically we are saying that these nutrients which are available in complex formats, suppose say the dead bodies of certain types of animals, dead bodies of plants, so we will see that these are present in complex chemical formats. Okay, so these decomposers decomposers are the ones that can degrade this complex substance into simpler substance. They are called decomposers, and this work is carried out by whom? Fungi and bacteria. Okay, so this process is called decomposition, and the organisms which carry it out are called decomposers. They are also known as saprotrophs. Troughs we already know, it is food, nourishment. Sapro, however, means rotten. Okay, rotten means dead and decaying organisms. So plants require this. Plants actually require this because nutrients, if the nutrients are not returned from the organic matter, from the living organisms back into the soil, you will find that the plants are not able to grow. They require nutrients in the soil. Okay, so nutrients in the soil come from decomposition process, and it plays an important role in recycling the nutrients. This is how the waste is being utilized and it is being cycled into it. Okay, now this box talks about migratory birds. Okay, migratory birds, the birds that travel to different places. Okay, in search of their own point A to point B. They travel from point A to point B in search of various kinds of things that are required for their own survival. Okay, so they migrate from different parts of the world to avoid harsh climate, search for food, and they not only enhance the aesthetics of those habitats, but they also play a significant role in balancing the ecosystem as pollinators and seed dispersers on the path they migrate. Okay, so this talks about, basically that talks about that we should be noting down what are the functions that are provided by them. They are predators of insect pests and help farmers to grow the pest populations. Basically understanding how does biotic interactions work. biotic interactions. Okay, now moving forward. Now we talk about ecosystem. When we are talking about ecosystem, we are also talking about them being interlinked. Okay, we are talking about various components, biotic, abiotic components, how they are interlinked. That means how does change in one thing lead to another thing. Okay, so let us see. First of all, it can be understood from this part, from this diagram itself, that you will see that if in an aquatic ecosystem, if in an aquatic ecosystem, if the plants die, if the plants die in an aquatic ecosystem, we know that respiration is needed. Okay, respiration is needed, therefore we say that oxygen is needed by the water body. If oxygen is there, then the water body, whatever species are surviving in that, they will also be able to carry out their life processes. But when the plants die, there is a drop in oxygen levels. When oxygen levels drop, when it drops, you'll find that it will also lead to the fishes dying. Okay, because they are not able to perform the process of respiration. Okay, because of that, you will have more number of insects that will be there in the population. Now because of these pests, you will find that the plants will also get damaged. So the plants get damaged because of the increase in number of pests. All right, so this is one example in which one change can lead to another change. All right. Now another activity, okay, this is Indian bullfrog. Okay, Indian bullfrog. You'll see in 1980s, India was a significant exporter. This tells you how how did the export of frogs from India led to disruption, okay, led to increase in use of pesticides, ecological damage, okay. So it was a significant exporter of frog legs, especially the Indian bullfrog. The large scale harvesting led to decline in frog populations. So frog population started declining. Okay, since the frog will eat insects, their reduced numbers resulted in a rise in agricultural pests. So therefore, agricultural pests started increasing. Why? Because the number of frogs reduced. The number of frogs used to keep in check the number of insects, and therefore now the agricultural pest increased. This made the farmers to use more synthetic pesticides, more amount of synthetic pesticides, and this use of synthetic pesticide will harm environment, it will harm soil, it will harm the water quality, and also affect the overall human health as well as environmental health. So this is when the government of India stepped in and they banned the export of frog legs to prevent further ecological damage. So we have to understand that ecosystem is always there in an equilibrium, and if you choose, should you choose to move one part or one organism in this line to another part, or there is a decline in the population because of this, you will find that this kind of delicate equilibrium is also going to be affected. However, we do not say that equilibrium is static. That means equilibrium can be managed and ecosystem can be managed only at a particular set of population of frogs, grasshoppers, grass. No, not at that particular population. It is always going to be dynamic. That means it can adjust itself as per the increasing or decreasing number. Okay, so this line is important. This balance is dynamic and it is not fixed and can be disrupted by natural or human made changes. So next thing is how do interactions maintain balance in ecosystems. Okay, so we will see this. There are multiple interactions that are taking place. Okay, so if we talk about interactions between two organisms, if both of them benefit from this interaction, if both of them benefit, two biotic interactions are there. Okay, two biotic components of the ecosystem are interacting. Mutualism would mean that both of them benefit from each other. So here the example is that of honeybees and flowers. So flower will get pollinated, they get benefited, and bees will get nectar, they will also get benefited. Commensalism. Commensalism is one in which the organism benefits while the other has no effect. That means plus is benefit, zero is no effect. Okay. For example, orchid that gets the physical support, it is getting benefited. The tree branch remains unaffected. Parasitism, one organism benefits while the other is harmed. This is plus and minus. That means one is benefiting, other is harmed. Okay, here dog. Dog gets skin irritation and tick feeds on the dog. It is getting benefited. This tick is getting benefited. This dog is getting harmed. Okay. Now, this is about a scientist, Asir Jawahar Thomas Johnson. Okay, he was a pioneer in studying wildlife through modern tracking system. His research showed how predators like tigers, leopards rely on prey such as deer and wild boar, and he has been working with Bandipur National Park, Karnataka. Okay, so basically he has done a lot of work in biotic understanding the interactions between the biotic components of the ecosystem. Now, to understand what are the benefits of an ecosystem? Okay, so forests, it is something that we know. Forests provide us with fresh air, fertile soil, food, fibers, timber, and medicine. Aquatic ecosystems, they provide us with water and food. Ecosystems also offer us aesthetic and recreational value. These support our well-being. This is something that we understand. Okay, now let us look at the real life example of a threatened ecosystem, and we are talking about Sundarbans. Okay, Sundarbans is a classic ecosystem example, and it is a classic ecosystem example of a mangrove. Okay, you can see that there are these type of fruits. Okay, this is something that is an adaptation. This is a kind of an adaptation. Because of the trees being near to the coast, they need certain types of management because they otherwise would not be able to balance their structure. Okay, so Sundarbans, so it is the largest mangrove forest in the world, and it is located where Ganga and Brahmaputra rivers will meet, and it is home to various flora and fauna which are endangered. They protect us by strong winds and waves during storms and floods. Okay, they are also very important. This is important that they are also dedicated as UNESCO World Heritage Site, declared Sundarbans a World Heritage Site in 1987. This is very, very important. 1987. Okay. Mangrove trees are being cut for fuel wood, and farming. Illegal hunting and overuse of forest resources are being threat to the wildlife living there. So basically, we are talking about there is a continuous habitat degradation. And because of this habitat degradation, this kind of a precious ecosystem is also going to get degraded. Okay, once it gets degraded, it is very difficult for us to recuperate. Okay, so human activities disrupt the natural way in which the ecosystems work. So there are a number of scientific heritage sites that we talk about. We're talking about various kinds of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, community conserved areas. These areas which are to be protected because of their significant wildlife and plants, wildlife, animals, all of them are present and they interact with each other. And if we are going to for their destruction, then there will be huge loss to the ecosystem. Okay, so what are these protected areas? Famous examples like Corbett National Park, Manas National Park, Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, Chilika Lake, Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary, Hemis National Park, Kibul Lamja, Pirotan Island Marine National Park. So these protected areas, we call them protected areas because we are protecting them against any kind of threat of biodiversity loss. Play a big role in saving the nature for future generation. Now, next we come to the human-made ecosystems. Human-made ecosystems. Okay, so we have created with respect to, because we are talking about ecosystem, natural ecosystems we have talked about. Now we are talking about the man-made or the human-made ecosystems. We have artificial ecosystem like fish ponds, farms, parks to meet our own needs. Unlike natural ecosystems, these need human care and management. This is definitely to be used. Okay, that means human care and management must be there. This continuous intervention must be there. Okay, so there was one thing that you might know of, and that is green revolution. Okay, it was said that to become food secure, okay, at one point of time, India was not having food security. Okay, but to have this food security, we had to go through green revolution. Now, green revolution at that point of time, it was sustained, but it is now proving to be very unsustainable. This kind of farm practice is something that is very unsustainable. It is because there is overuse of synthetic chemicals, excessive groundwater extraction, and growing only one type of crop for commercial grain. Okay, so all of this create unsustainability in the food security patterns that we have. Okay, so it is important. Basically, the point here is that we must understand ecosystems and use only sustainable practice. Okay, understanding ecosystems and help us adopt better and more sustainable farming practices. Okay, now this last part is there. That is, what inference do you draw from the interactions with the farmers? That means you are basically, there was an activity that is prescribed in the book, in the chapter, and you must go and interact with the farmers on how much do they use, how much do they rely on the organisms that are present naturally, and how much are they utilizing the synthetic or the man-made fertilizers. Okay, so you will see when you interact with the farmers, you will find that most of them are using synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, plays a vital role in improving crop production and helps country like India become food secure. This is important for our food security. Otherwise, we will not have food on our plates. Okay. However, the long-term use can affect the environment as well as the soil health. Why? Because the overuse of synthetic fertilizer may reduce soil fertility by decreasing friendly microorganisms in soil. Okay. So this is one thing. Second is heavy irrigation. Heavy irrigation and repeated plowing can also disturb the microorganisms that are there in the soil. We have talked about earthworms, they also get disturbed, and therefore any kind of aeration for the soil is also getting disturbed. So, which are important to maintain ecological balance. And some pests will also develop resistance. They will also develop resistance to pesticides and making them difficult to control. And also, if you go for growing of the same crop multiple times, the pest gets accustomed to it, and therefore there will be greater losses. So growing the same crop repeatedly, known as monoculture. Okay, it is known as actually monoculture. That means you're growing only one crop. Like for example, you're just growing wheat. So the pests, they have become accustomed to it, and whatever the pesticides that you were using, they are becoming resistant to it as well. They can reduce biodiversity, affect pollinators, and which are crucial for controlling food production. Okay. So to make this farming more sustainable, some farmers are exploring organic and natural farming methods. This is something that we find in the news also, that people are turning towards more organic products. They need to have certain products in which a lot of chemicals are not being used. Okay, so these aim to reduce the use of synthetic fertilizer and support sustainable farming with minimal interference in the natural ecosystem. So we are saying that human-made ecosystems are there. It is basically to secure ourselves, like we must have food security. But however, there are certain unsustainable practices that are affected, and therefore we must try to reduce them as much as possible. Use less number of chemicals because it affects both human health as well as environmental health. So with this, we come to an end of this chapter. This chapter was from the book, from the NCERT Curiosity book, science book. This is chapter number 12, and this is from the class 8 textbook of science. Okay, hope you understood it, and wherever you find doubts, please do ask us. Thank you so much.